Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Owner's Box After Dark. Yes, I have Hugh Hefner's pipe tonight. Yes, I am Mark Farinella, the former assistant sports editor, Patriots beat writer, God, you name it, I did it, at daily newspaper down here in... I was wondering why everything was looking fuzzy, and then I realized I don't have my glasses on. Oh, my goodness. The numbers up on the wall there were, so much better. So much better. Whoop. Yes. Okay, now I'm recognizable. Yes, I worked for a paper down here in southeastern Massachusetts, and this is the 39th episode of The Owner's Box After Dark. I was looking at myself, I said, geez, there's something different about you. Maybe you're getting younger, Mark. I don't know what it was, except for that wide-eyed look of, I don't know where I am. Anyway, I am, okay, I'm in place now. Everything seems to be fitting right. I'm hopefully in one piece, and I'm kind of getting rested again, which is nice, at least for a little while. The high school basketball season and hockey season is over. And we actually have started the high school football season here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, although not for games yet. Those are still at least 2 or 3 weeks in the future. But it was a busy time for me. As most of you know, if you've been watching these things, I am a veteran sports writer, but I have become, in my retirement, a broadcaster, a play-by-play announcer for high school basketball, football, soccer, hockey, field hockey. That's what I've done so far. I'm going to add volleyball to the list in a few weeks, too, which is going to be an adventure in itself. But, I work for 2 cable TV outlets. It used to be 3, but I couldn't work in Foxborough this year because they banned all outsiders. Fear of the COVID virus. Which is understandable. In fact, I actually wrote a column about that today, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So I think working for North TV in North Attleboro, covering King Philip Regional High School in Wrentham, you folks should know the explanation for that by now. They own the Plainville channel. And also for Mansfield Cable Access here in Mansfield, which, of course, as I've neglected to mention, these recorded podcasts are coming to you from the Studio A in the palatial surroundings of Fulton Pond Studios in Mansfield, Massachusetts. I must have done, let's see, in Mansfield, probably 9 boys basketball games and 7 girls basketball games. And remember, this was supposed to be a shortened season. There were only supposed to be 10 games played, which would have been 5 home games for each of them. So the boys and the girls both added on a lot, and we also overlapped a little bit with North TV in that we did King Philip and Mansfield twice, basically. Well, same teams, different school, and we thus avoided the COVID restriction on visiting a road game because for us at North TV, that was the home game. I did about 8 King Philip basketball games, boys and girls combined. I did 3 hockey games. That was an adventure. If you have watched one of these earlier episodes, you would have noticed the example I put up for your perusal was of me trying to read a drop-in commercial just at the time that a Franklin kid scored a goal against King Philip. So it was a first, and believe me, an adventure for me. While we have a moment here, I will remind everybody today's game is being presented to you by W.H. Riley & Son, serving the area's heating oil, propane, and cooling needs since 1873. That's W.H. Riley & Son, 35 Chestnut Street in North Attleboro, and 125 Winter Street, and there's a goal. Number 28, Ben Jarrows, the sophomore for Franklin, knocks one in right while I'm doing the commercial.
Go back to the commercial, Mac. It's 4-0.
We did 1 boys hockey game at King Philip, 1 girls hockey game, and we did a Bishop Feian girls game. girls hockey game as well. And that's one of the rare times that I get to do a school other than King Philip. Every now and then they throw me into maybe a Bishop Feian or a Tri-County regional game. I don't know if we're going to have fall 2 sports at Tri-County this year. They completely wiped out their winter season, which was a shame. But it was fun. But I'm glad to get a little bit of a break here because my voice gets a little challenged. I used to call it Dale Arnold disease. Now, that's after the longtime WEEI personality who used to do Bruins play-by-play on television. And the problem Dale would face every now and then was that he'd be doing a stretch of games and also doing his daily talk show, and his voice would get hoarse and challenged. And if he had any cold or anything like that during that period of time, it would wreak havoc with him. It was just tough because if you heard my last year, my podcast with Jack Edwards, the current Bruins television announcer, you would know that it takes a lot of discipline and training for your voice to be able to meet the challenge of doing so many games. And, I should have Jack back on here again. I'd really love to hear what it's like to have to call games from a monitor. I did not have to do that this year. I was able to be in person, but the Bruins games I've made a contact with Bob Sosi of the Patriots play-by-play voice. He had to do the same thing this year. They did not travel to their games. I really should get them. I should get them both on and talk to them about what it's like to have to do things off a monitor, because while I said I did not do that, I know that some cable systems forced their play-by-play people locally to do it off monitors. And I heard one, I think it was from Canton, Massachusetts, and oh God, those poor kids. They were high school kids, and God bless them for trying, but boy, did they struggle at it, because I'm sure they didn't have the kind of monitors and coverage that, say, Jack or Bob would have had doing their pro sports. I sometimes would watch a lot of different games this year trying to prepare for the telecast that I would be doing, because I just want to see these teams. And fortunately, there was so much live streaming in the area this year that I was able to go on YouTube or the local cable system would have their own live streaming or archives, and I'd be able to watch games. And there were many of them were done with what we call the Huddle camera. There's this outfit called Huddle. They basically they install cameras in your gym, and you can use them as kind of like something to help you get your film out to scouts, somebody who'd be looking for college talent. And basically the cameras they pan back and forth, and somebody controls them somewhere, but they don't have announcers, and usually they don't really have the ability to zoom in on the action either. So from what you're watching, you really would struggle at looking and seeing what the numbers are on the kids, especially if they're girls and they got long ponytails and they cover up the number on back. But I actually tried to practice play-by-play here at home by myself. I have no life. And and I would try to call the game that I was seeing, which I hadn't seen before. If I was familiar with one of the teams, fine. I would have the roster from the other team, and I would try to do the call off of the monitor. And just in my head, I would not have a color man next to me, so I would not have the opportunity to have analysis break up the monotony of my voice. But it was difficult, and I'm just so glad I had the opportunity to do whatever games I did this year. I'm glad I was able to do them in person, except for the 3 hockey games, because when you wear a mask over your face, the air that you expel can either go sideways, down, but most likely it's going to rise up because it's warm air. And in a hockey rink where they have to keep the place cold so that the ice stays frozen, my glasses would fog up and it would be almost unmerciful. I could not, I would have the hardest time seeing what was going on if it wasn't happening right in front of me. Now, I think I overcame that fairly well. Not as well as I would have liked. Let's just say I would like to get more practice at doing hockey, and I didn't have the opportunity to, because there were so many games postponed, things we were supposed to do that would be rescheduled and rescheduled again. And then there was one time they changed the opponent, and Glenn Farley and I, who have been doing the game, thought that since the original game was postponed, we were off that day. So we both made other plans. We couldn't go to this other game on short notice. But all that being said, I need more practice at it, but I think I did okay on the hockey, but the glasses fogging up part. And the only reason why that happened was because of the mask. I could go into a hockey rink tomorrow if I didn't have to wear the mask, and I'd be fine. My glasses don't fog up under circumstances like that because the air is going out this way, but not when it's going right up into my eyes. And yeah, that was something. I've got there's got to be ways. Maybe they've made some sort of spray that you can put on. I mean, they have stuff for your windshield, right? That's supposed to cut down on fogging, but I just don't know if they would melt my prescription lenses. So. But anyway, it was a fun season. I had a blast. In a few weeks, I will be doing King Philip Regional High School football again. Only the home games this season, in this Fall 2 season. So I think there'll only be maybe 3 broadcasts at the most, maybe 4 if I'm lucky. And we'll probably do 2 volleyball games. Now, my close friend and brother from another mother, Alex Salaki, who was my basketball analyst for North TV and a couple of Mansfield games. He was also the volleyball coach at Zvarian Brothers High School in Westwood to go along with his long stretch as the boys basketball coach. Boys, that's it. I mean, they don't have girls there. I could never, ever have survived in an all-boys school. I would have wanted to blow my brains out. That's all there is to it. But anyway, so he can help me out. He'll be doing the color for our few high school girls volleyball contests at King Philip. And from what I understand, they're going to be on the weekends, which makes it easier for him because he has a full-time job. I have no life. I can do anything I want. So we will get together and we'll do that. So that'll be fun. And then I guess hopefully after the summer, if we can get vaccinated around here, and I can't, and I'm actually eligible right now, but try to go on to any of these websites in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and see if you can get an appointment anywhere, and let me know, because I've tried, and Gillette Stadium is 4 miles from where I live? Anyway, but if everything's good in the fall, I think we'll go back to doing both home and away. At least I hope so. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. So, and I like doing football. It was the first thing I did in play-by-play, although I had a feeling I'd be better at basketball than I was at anything else, and that is the truth. But I'm looking forward to it. But again, I do need the break. I'm going to go down the Cape or something like that for a day or two, and just get a change of scenery, which is always good, especially here. And as we are in our 50th week of the pandemic, we are getting close to actually 1 year of this. Who would have thought? And a sobering note to all this, today, which is the 22nd of February, 2021, we marked the awful milestone of 500,000 American deaths from the pandemic. There's a lot I could say about that. I won't. I just wish peace to all the folks who have suffered through this, and let's hope we can get this on the right path soon. We have to. We have no choice. All right, that's a bad milestone. Let's talk about a happier milestone. I do love happy milestones, and one of the happiest ones for me is always to see a high school basketball player go over 1,000 career points. Oh, by the way, the beverage of the night was something I got at KFC. I think it's Diet Dr. Pepper. We'll find out anyway. No, that's the real sweet stuff. I would have preferred diet. Anyway, I love milestones. 1,000 points is not as easy as it may seem. let's face it, there was a time, 1940s, 50s, 60s, even into the 70s, where it was a lot more difficult. First of all, kids didn't play varsity basketball when they were freshmen in those days. They did not. They were lucky to get on the teams as sophomores. Most kids at high schools around here, anyway, were lucky to get 2 seasons, their junior year and their senior year. And if they were really good, they might play some more, and that would have been the really top of the tier group. They are not, it's these days it's a little easier because you have more games that are played. If you say, like, you are a talented young athlete, you might get to play as a freshman, and you might get to play 10, maybe even 20 games that year. If you're really good, you're going to play the whole season. Then you might have 20 games. Or if your team is good, you're going to get a lot more games. You take Mansfield High School around here. I think in the last 4 years, the boys basketball team has not played fewer than 25 games in any of those years. So that's 100 games at least, and I think more than that they've had, actually, to be able to reach that level, except for this year, of course. And believe me, it's still amazing that the Mansfield boys were able to get 16 games out of this season. They added games against good teams at the very last minute because there were so many disruptions in this season that it was difficult for people to complete the 10-game schedules that they were originally given. Mansfield lost 2 games early in the season to an outbreak in Taunton. Now, they ended up playing those games later, but in the meantime, they were able to pop a game in there. And then, as other teams in the Hockomock League were having trouble filling out their schedules because there were postponements all over the place, they canned the idea of having a postseason tournament, which was kind of a shame. But they allowed teams to start scheduling other teams outside of the league. So Mansfield put on some really good opponents. They put in Plymouth North, which is good this year. Lowell Catholic, which was excellent, a fun team to watch. They run, they steal the ball. Couldn't handle the Hornets, but they were a pretty good team. And then finally, Brookline, which is a team that they probably would have ended up facing in the Division I South tournament had there been a Division I South tournament this year, because they were good. And, of course, Mansfield won. They ended up 15-1 this year. Taunton did beat them in the first game at Taunton by 4 points. The next day they had to play at Mansfield, and the Hornets won by, I forgot, it was like 18, 19 points or something like that. So they end up finishing, they end up finishing tied in the league. I think there was one game that was forfeited to Taunton. And the bottom line is that the Hornets now have won something like 10 straight Hockomock League championships, and 11 of the last 12, I think. Not bad for a school that used to be the smallest in the Hockomock League. Not anymore, of course. But anyway, on the point of milestones, one of those milestones came watching that Mansfield High School team, because senior guard Matty Bowen defied all the odds against him to reach 1,000 points. He finished his career with 1,047. He did it in the last 15 seconds of the second game against Taunton, and he still had 2 other games left to play. But it's kind of nice to have that cushion, because you never know what could happen. Like, there was a case years ago, a kid in Norton. His name was Dave Bonifant, and he was a good basketball player. And his last regularly scheduled game was against Mansfield. It was a non-league game, and it was at Norton. And he went into the game needing something like 5 or 6 points to get to 1,000. And the Hornet defense just shut him off. He ended up getting to 999. But nobody thought that was bad, because in those days this was like 1976, I think it was. There was a thing called the Bay State Tournament that was basically for teams that didn't qualify for the larger, in those days called the Tech Tourney, which was for teams that had won 70% of their games or more. There was another tournament offered for the next tier down. It was kind of like the NIT of Massachusetts. And so everybody figured that Norton had at least one game scheduled in that, and that Dave would hit 1,000. Somehow the paperwork got messed up. I don't know how. I know if I said it right now that the athletic director of the time would get all upset with me because he says it wasn't his fault, and I'll take him at his word. But whatever happened, Norton did not get to play in that other postseason tournament, and the poor kid ended up at 999. That's sad. But over the years at the 12 high schools, well, actually 11, but I count 12 because there was one school that was merged into another system that had a kid go over 1,000 many, many years ago. Of that group, and I have the list, and it's like 3 pages long here, of those schools, 110 kids have scored 1,000 career points or more. One of them scored 2,000 points or more, actually 2,562, and that was Sarah Bain of Foxborough. Of all those people, as it figured out, I have seen personally 82 of the 111 possible milestone moments in person. That's not bad. I loved it. I wanted to see it happen because 1,000 points isn't just a kid who can score. It's a kid that is durable, doesn't get hurt, knows the game, can play successfully with teammates even though they are the leading scorer, and game in and game out can be relied on that kind of leadership by being the primary weapon of the team. It's not easy. And, I loved getting the chance to see some of it. I looked at this list and I thought, well, of course, I could talk about the 2 times that Sarah Bain got it, or my friend from Foxborough, Holly Grinnell. They did it in tournament games, and they could not stop the games to honor the moment. As in most of the cases, these kids get a chance to, take a bow before they resume play and get balloons and other stuff. That's always planned, and the coach will call timeout when it happens and all that. But in the tournament games, they don't allow that. But just a couple of quick memories. One of my favorites was Kim Lynch of Seekonk. Kim ended up with the 4th leading total among local girls with 1,728 points in 94 games. Kim was 4'11", if anything, in her junior year, but she was a scoring machine. She could throw up the 3-pointer with ease, but if that wasn't there, she could drive with a burst of speed to the hoop and get to the basket and score that way. And she was always active on the floor and continued that well into her 40s as a basketball official. Now, she's taken a few years off from that now because she has a daughter at Seekonk High School who's a pretty good athlete and is she likes to be able to watch her, but Kim brought that same energy to her officiating that she did to her play. But in her junior year, late in the junior year, they had a non-league game scheduled at Lincoln, Rhode Island, which is just a few miles over the border from Seekonk being right at the state line. And so she went there. I forgot how many points she needed, but everybody knew that they didn't want her to do it not just in another school, but in another state. They figured that they could, pull her out of a game and bring her back to Seekonk for her next game, and she'd do it there in front of the home fans, and that would be great. Well, in this particular game, though, she's in the game, and they kind of needed her in there because it was a relatively close game. Finally, she's at 997, I think it was. Yes, 997. And the coach, Bob Kalaga, was ready to pull Kim out of the game. He sent somebody to the scorer's table to get her out. At that precise moment, Kim stole the ball at the other end foul line and raced to the basket and scored and was fouled in the process. 999 and a chance to get 1,000. It was only then that it dawned on her that, oh my God, I'm going to do it here and not at home. And, of course, nobody wanted to see her do it that way. So Kim looked at the bench, kind of winked, and stepped to the foul line. She was handed the ball. And the second she was handed the ball, She took one giant step over the line, over the foul line. That is a lane violation. No shot. Buzzer. She comes out of the game. 9.99. That was funny. The next game, however, she struggled mightily. I think it was the pressure of having to do it and the fact that the other team, it was one of their league opponents, was really trying to take it away from her. She finally got there in the second half, midway through the second half of that game, and everybody was relieved more than anything else. Another one that's one of my favorites is definitely Paul Souza of Mansfield. He was a guest on my podcast recently. Talked about the fact that he had COVID. He lives in Indianapolis now. He had COVID and has gotten over it. Thank goodness for that. But Paul was the first Mansfield player to get over 1,000 points in something like, well, let's see here if I can find his. Here's his total. Paul Souza, 1,036 points, finished in 1979. Prior to that, the most recent male athlete to have done it at Mansfield High School was the school's all-time leader, Ron Gentili, who scored 1,387 points through 1962. So as you can see, there was quite a gap there between 1,000-point scores. He had a game at North Attleboro, and North Attleboro and Mansfield had a great rivalry, huge, intense, sometimes bitter rivalry, and a game at North Attleboro where he got to 9.99 at the end of the game. So the Red Rocketeers were happy that they were able to stop him from getting it on their floor. And in fact, the current athletic director at Mansfield, Mike Redding, was a player on that North Attleboro team. The scene shifts to the James Albertini Memorial Gymnasium here in Mansfield on a Friday night. Paul is good friends with one of the players on the Oliver Ames High School team from the neighboring town of Easton. His name's Mike Deneen. Best player on the team. Terrific kid. In fact, strangest, he was playing college ball. I forgot what the college was, but on the week that I went to Los Angeles to see the Patriots play the Raiders in the playoffs at the Coliseum, at the hotel I was staying at, Mike Deneen's college basketball team was there to go play somebody out there on the West Coast, and we bump into each other in the lobby, and it's just like, oh my goodness, how about that? Small world. But okay, in the warm-ups, Mike Deneen, knowing that Paul Souza needed only 1 point, went to the official who was overseeing the warm-ups. Even once the officials are on the floor, they basically control the game. And he says to the official, watch this. Mike gets the ball, runs to the basket, slams it home, slam dunk. Technical foul. In those days, it may still be. I don't know. I don't think it's enforced at all. But that was a technical foul if you dunked the ball in warm-ups. And so, with a wink, wink, and a nudge, nudge, Paul went to the foul line all by himself with 1,500 kids in the stands and no players on the floor. And Paul went out there all by himself to sink that one free throw. And in those days, a technical foul was only one shot. Flip, boom. And I was shooting it. I was using my camera at the other end, and I was able to kind of flip the focus of the zoom lens that I had real quickly. So I got him releasing the ball, and I got the ball going through the net. His 1,000th point. That was a great moment. And all because a kid did him a solid, which is kind of what you'll see here in this film, in this video that I have of Matty Bowen getting his 1,000th point against Taunton. It was late in the game. Matty had been to the foul line several times. He came into the fourth quarter with only, I think, 6 points, and he needed 12 in the game. But he kept getting to the foul line. So finally, with 15 seconds left in the game pretty much out of Taunton's reach, Matty got the ball under the basket, and one of the best players on the Taunton team, Josh Lopes, fouled him immediately. And you'll see that there was kind of a hug and a pat between the two. They knew what was going on. So Matty went to the foul line, and you will see here exactly what happened. $67-50, 15.2 seconds left.
They may try to miss here, actually. I don't know why, but...
Dips, shoots, scores. Hornets have the ball one last time, and he is fouled immediately.
There we go.
By Josh Lopes. And you know what? Josh just sacked... I think that is his... Let's see what they're going to... It's only his fourth, I believe.
2 shots.
That's what I have, Andy. But anyway, Matty Bowen goes to the line with 15.2 seconds left. He will have 2. He is at 9.99. He dips. He shoots. He gets it! He gets it!
Woo!
1,000 career points for Matt Bowen.
Nicely going to stop this game.
And he becomes the 5th Mansfield High School male athlete to score 1,000 career points. And, of course, there are 2 young women on that list, too. Suzanne Patchett and Meg Hill. But Matty Bowen becomes the 5th boy. He trails Ron Gentili, Ryan Bolter, Paul Souza, and Jeff Stearns. And Bolter was the last one to do it in 2015. So we've had a 6-year run here between 1,000-pointers, and it couldn't happen to a nicer kid. As the Bowens pose for Kara Colby for the commemorative photograph. I love moments like that. We'll be back with more of the Owner's Box after dark. After these words from one of our sponsors.
いよいよ初戦だな。ああ。
二人とも頑張って。
あやめさん。
スマートバリューズのチアリーダーになったの。
え？
スマートバリューズスマホが毎月1,480円もお得。
嬉しい。
私も負けないわよ。
姉ちゃん。
ゴーゴースマートバリューズ家族4人だとこんなにお得。
家族のスマホも安くなる
au スマートバリュー au
Hello once again. Welcome back to the Owner's Box after dark. I am your host, Mark Farinella. And if you didn't know that by now, why are you watching? The mood candle for tonight is the Evergreen Mist from Yankee Candle. I actually had to chop up the wax a little bit here because it wasn't melting evenly. So it's kind of building up on the sides. I hate wasting things. I'm one of those people. I'm kind of anal about it, I guess. I want the candle to melt down as much as it possibly can, and once it gets to the point where there's no wick left, I will melt the remaining wax, pour it into little cups, plastic cups, and then once it's hardened, I use that stuff to shred into other candles to slow the melting away of the burning away of the wax inside. So, I mean, this candle's already gotten about 2 or 3 doses of additional Evergreen Mist from a prior candle. I do the same thing with soap bars. Years ago, I used to do a blog on the Sun Chronicles website. It was poorly done, and I think I've mentioned it before. I had to battle with some plumber from Norton with about how many posts I put up. He called me a blog hog. Screw him. Anyway, I used to do a recurring feature called Soap on a Dope. And what the premise of it was, I would take a picture of what newest hotel soap bar I'd gotten. In those days, I mean, we're talking about 20 years ago now, I guess. And the soap bars were always usually very unique to the hotel chains, whether it was a Marriott or Hilton or wherever I might be staying somewhere on the road. And I would bring home tons of soap. In fact, I would usually raid the housekeeping cart for extra bars of soap. And I think I must have gone about 25 years without ever buying store-bought soap. I never had to buy Dial or anything like that because I brought so much soap home from the road that I would have all this soap and I would use it. But I would also track how many days it would take a hotel bar, which is usually smaller and harder, or maybe later on it was built with little holes in it and stuff like that, so they didn't have to use as much soap. Because, as you know, there's a lot of waste involved in hotel soap. But I would not waste it. I would make sure that I would get that bar as thin as possible, and at that point I would count that as the last day. So usually a bar would last about an average of 10 to 12 days in regular washing circumstances. And then I would merge it in to the next bar. Even if it didn't even look like the next bar, because usually all the soaps were different, but I would press it down onto the top of the other one because it was so thin and pliable. And then once you wash with it a little bit, it would become one bar of soap. As a result, I never wasted anything. What I got from the hotel went on my body and into the drain. And nothing was put in the wastebasket. It was all used, and I'm very proud of that. And I actually still do that to this day, even though I don't have the cachet of soap that I had in the old days because I just don't travel anymore. But I do merge bars into other bars. Where was I going with this? Well, exactly. It was like the idea is I don't like to waste stuff. So as a result, I keep my candles a little bit fresher with some old wax, as long as it's matching scent. I'm not going to put apple cider in that one. But the same thing with the bars of soap, and I still do that a little bit. I mean, I basically use Dial now, like everybody else. And when the bar gets super thin, you can just smoosh it on, and it's really kind of cool because after about 5 or 6 days, because I usually squish it on top of the cutout lettering that says Dial, then all of a sudden the lettering reappears. And it's like, oh yeah, it's just like a brand new bar of soap. Yeah, this is what happens when you live alone. The next and last topic of the evening that I want to talk about briefly is the column I wrote today. For those of you who don't pay attention to the scrolls at the bottom, I have a website. It is called Blogging Fearlessly, but I use the owner's box as its all-encompassing title. So, if you go to www.theownersbox2020.com, you will get to my website, which I put columns like I used to write on the sports pages or other information, all sorts of my schedule of games that I'm going to be telecasting, a couple of coffee reviews, maybe a restaurant review, although I haven't done restaurant reviews lately because, the restaurants are not as full service as they have been. I really haven't had the opportunity to go out to them. So, but it's usually a good take. So, like, I have rekindled the long-running title of some of my columns, which I used to say Ponderous Thoughts columns. I had a beginning that would say Ponderous Thoughts I was pondering while, and then it would be something I've been doing. That kind of ties in there. So the column I wrote today started off mentioning that one of the fellows for whom I work is also a columnist and still working as one, and he had to write today basically an admission that his idea that the high school winter sports season was a bad idea, that he was wrong about that. And, let's face it, there was a 50-50 chance that he would be right or that he would be wrong. None of us knew as we were going into this that this would be successful. And in some areas it wasn't. I mean, there were several towns, not locally, but on the periphery of around here, that did struggle mightily with positive COVID tests and having to put their programs on hold and things like that. We here in Mansfield were extraordinarily lucky that never happened. King Philip, until the last week, was in good shape there, and then all of a sudden they had one week where they had, I think, something like 5 to 8 positive cases in the school, and I don't even think it affected any of the athletes. So that was a problem for them. And then they some of the other schools had to postpone games because of what was happening in other towns, and it made a mess of the schedule. And as a result, that's why there was no Hockomock Cup tournament that was supposed to be played, kind of a league-wide championship. There just wasn't the time to do it. And there were so many teams that they didn't even know who won one of the divisions in boys basketball until practically the day before games were supposed to end. So it's kind of a shame. Maybe if it ever happens again in the future, they might be better prepared for it. It worked fine, or pretty fine, during the fall, although I do recall that I think it was Foxborough had a contact tracing situation with their girls soccer team, and they had to bow out of the Hockomock Cup tournament at the last minute. But other than that, it worked okay. But hey, in a pandemic, you just don't know what's going to happen. And part of what I was talking about today was that it is difficult, very difficult, to be a 67-year-old man with, I hate to call them comorbidities or whatever they're calling them. I'm okay. I'm hanging around, but yeah, I'm overweight. I had a stroke. I have high blood pressure, or it's under control right now. I have diabetes, which is under control. Could be a little bit better, but it's a lot better than it was. And if I could drop a few pounds once my knee is where it should be, this is all yeah. New Year's resolutions, yeah. Okay. I fully intend to try to get to walking normally and naturally again soon. And I think the knee is getting closer and closer to that. But, it's still, I'm in that demographic where COVID-19 just salivates over me. And certainly, so are my broadcast partners. And I mentioned it today. Alex Salaki, he's a month older than I am. He's 67 and one extra month than me. Tommy Faria was 64, and yet he did have he had a mild case of COVID before the season started. I mean, several weeks before, but he still had to follow the protocols, and thus he missed the first week of the Mansfield games that he and I were going to cover together, which is why Alex subbed in for him. And then we were kind of both fortunate in that they canceled the two Taunton games for the following week, pushed them to the end of the season. And he got a little bit of extra time just to, get up to snuff. Glenn Farley, who does hockey and did some basketball with me, and also is my football broadcast partner. He is 65. He just turned 65. So as a result, we got a bunch of old white men doing these games and trying not to die in the process. And right next door to me is Gillette Stadium, one of the mass vaccination sites. They have the Moderna vaccine there, the one that's the easiest to keep. It doesn't have to be frozen to absolute zero or whatever the hell they have to do with it. It's supposedly 98% effective. And, certainly it's easy to go there. I mean, they got plenty of parking. They've scheduled these things, and you cannot get into it to save your life. Now, until last week, I was not eligible. Even though, I'm a senior citizen now, I guess. I hate to admit it. But, they were still dealing with the 75 and over crowd. Now, they have opened it up to 65 and over with some pre-existing conditions, and I qualify. So I keep checking the state website, and it draws you right to everything. Here's Gillette Stadium, Fenway Park. Now, I don't want to drive to Fenway Park to get a shot. I'm 4 to 5 miles away from Gillette Stadium. I want to do it there. I'd rather do it at a doctor's office or at a CVS or at a Walgreens, but that's all up right now too. So it's not happening, and it was kind of disheartening when I got something from my friends at Brigham and Women's, and believe me, my medical care since my stroke I have entrusted it to Brigham and Women's, and they have been magnificent. But they sent me something that's saying that because of governmental restrictions and how the vaccine was going to be distributed, they could no longer offer it as part of, doctor's visits, visits with my primary care physician and things like that, which is a shame because I have one coming up in a couple of weeks, and I'd really like to be able to just stick the arm out there and say, shoot away, man. Can't happen. So, but 50 steps away would be the big vaccination project there at the stadium. Go on that website. You cannot get an appointment to save your life. And that's what I'm afraid of. This might be one of those things. I do want to save my life. Now, I've been lucky so far, okay? 11 months plus, and I haven't gotten it yet. Now, sound effect. I have been about as healthy as I've ever been, to be honest. I haven't gotten the flu. I might have had one cold somewhere along the way. I have my usual allergy issues. I have dust issues, maybe some mold issues, although I don't think I have mold in the house, at least not what I'm thinking. I think it's mostly dust issues for me. And so bottom line is I have not had anything happen to me that I did not expect to happen. So far, so good. I just don't like pushing the edge of the envelope on my luck. Look, it's here. It's time. Let me get the damn vaccine, please. But it just doesn't, it's not happening yet. So I guess I talked a little bit about being afraid, maybe in the pit of my stomach or deep in my soul, or however you want to put it, when I'd walk into a gym and know that maybe someone in there, unbeknownst to anybody else, might have COVID-19, and I was breathing it in. Now, I religiously wear the masks. Believe me, I do not play around with that. Even during the hockey broadcast, although I will admit in the last one, it was at the Foxborough Sports Center over here in Foxborough, coldest place around, and I did have to pull the mask down under my nose so that I wasn't blowing air up into my face. But we were very well distanced where we were, too, between me and Glenn and the cameraman. So first of all, I don't have it. Second of all, I don't think I'd be spreading it. It's so cold, the friggin' virus would die anyway. Hockey. But that's the only time I actually even adjusted remotely to it. So far so good, but I'm just tired of waiting, and I cannot believe that what I would like to believe is one of the more enlightened states in the entire union is so screwed up regarding the distribution of the vaccines. It's a mess, and it's going to get fixed somehow. And look, I've been a kind of a fan of Charlie Baker, even though he's a Republican, because he's not that kind of Republican. But this rollout, miserable as it is going to cost him his position as governor. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The only question at that point is, will whoever succeeds him whenever that term is over, will we all be still alive? Will we have a need for any of this? I don't know. I'd like to think that this fall I'll be able to go into the MacTaz Field press box at King Philip Regional High School, no mask, and be able to talk as I did during my first season of doing play-by-play. Not that I can't do it with a mask on. I did soccer and field hockey games there successfully, and other than the slightly muffled sound of a covered face, I think the telecast sounded pretty good, but I just want it to be over. I think we all have, thank God many of us don't have COVID, but we all have COVID fatigue. And then, then the news comes out, as it did today, that we are up to 500,000 fatalities. And I remember I was doing public service announcements for the audio podcast before where I was talking about 50,000 being shocking and something that had to be stopped immediately. And now here we are, 10 times that. And it's going to rise more until we get this squared away. Now, I believe that the current administration, that Joe Biden and company, are trying to fix it. They were left a mess, as most of us who knew Donald Trump from his past failures, we knew that it was going to be a mess that the Biden administration would have to inherit, but had no idea it was this bad a mess. And then since it's left to the states, some states are doing much better at getting it squared away than this one. And that's not good. But I'm hopeful. I remain hopeful and believing in the good of those with the best intentions, and I just hope we get it all squared away, because I'd like to hang around for quite a few more years. In fact, I'm enjoying this new facet of my life, this new phase, and I would like it to continue for as long as possible until things completely break down and I'm sitting here in a pool of my own mush. So, there are a couple other topics I thought I might want to get into tonight, but I want to keep this in a good mood, so I'm just going to, good mood. I've just talked about fatalities and COVID. I don't want to get any deeper tonight. It's been a fun time. There are scary parts of it, but that's life. We go through this. We hit peaks and we hit valleys. Unfortunately, the peaks are higher than they've ever been, and the valleys are ridiculous. I will mention one thing. I have a cousin in Texas. He and I don't see eye to eye on politics or anything else, but we do have a good sense of humor that we share. And I really have been terrified that these power outages and the lack of water and all that is threatening to him and to anybody he knows. So I really hope the folks in Texas will be able to pull out of this. I also have a very close former classmate out there. She has multiple sclerosis, and she's incredibly active. And hopefully that this has not been a crisis that she can't overcome. But I have not heard anything from her, and would assume that with power outages and such, she has not been online. I hope these people also realize, though, and this is very important, I'm a big fan of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC for short. I think she's the hottest thing to hit Washington since sliced bread. Not a sexual reference, please. She's just got the fire in the belly that I wish so many other politicians would have. Now, I don't necessarily agree with everything. She might be even a little bit too liberal for me. And that's saying a lot. But I just love her enthusiasm for the job. And I love the fact that she has put everything she has into this effort to raise some money to help these people in Texas at a time when it's really needed, like food banks and water and other things that they need. And, you know, she's been busting her hump for this, and now it's something like close to $5 million that's been raised. And I really hope that some of those yahoos out there understand that this woman is not the devil that Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson or Laura Ingraham has made her out to be. I know it's Ingraham, but never mind. The AOC's worked hard for them. And, you know, believe me, if it happened in her district, she would be working every bit as hard. So it's not like she's taking something away from the people that she would normally be representing. This is leadership. This is something that's needed in America up and down the pipeline. And while Ted Cruz was running off to Cancun, Representative Ocasio-Cortez was doing her job and doing the job that he should have been doing. God bless her. So I'm impressed by that. If you would like to let me know that I'm full of it, you can send me an email. The address for email is theownersbox2020@gmail.com. You can send it via snail mail, which is accessible at The Owner's Box, Post Office Box 272, Mansfield, Massachusetts, 02048. And of course, as I mentioned, the website. You've already seen the address. I don't want to stumble all over it again. You can read that full column, and also some of the points I made about what the future may hold for live streaming high school sports. I wish we could do it all the time, but these things just don't happen by osmosis. It costs money, whether they're volunteers working at Mansfield Cable Access or whether they're people that are actually getting paid, like at North TV. It still costs money to do the whole thing, and that is at the root of all sorts of problems. And if you read my column, you will understand the reasons why. So please do that. The timeline for some new interviews on The Owner's Box, the regular edition, the audio edition, is starting to pick up a little bit. I have a couple of people. One is a repeat guest, but I think it'll be worth listening to. I just have to confirm everything. So, but I'm looking forward to getting that going again. As always, I ask you, please use the hand sanitizer. Good stuff. Keeps everything clean. You know what they mentioned? I saw there was a study done. I can't remember where it was. It was somewhere overseas, that said that people who wear glasses are something like 30% less likely to get COVID. And I said, oh, how can that be? I'm blowing air up into my eyes the whole time from the mask. Well, what they say is it's because you don't stick your hands into your eyes, and your hands go everywhere, so you're touching this and touching that. So if you have glasses on, you're not poking yourself in the eye as much as someone who would be otherwise likely to, to poke themselves in the eye. I don't know if that was terrifically scientific or not, but still, it's nice to know, since I've been wearing these in my beak since I was in 6th grade. Wash your hands. Try to be safe. These are still trying times, and I think we've had enough statistics for a while. Let's turn that corner. Let's get on the home stretch back to normalcy, and maybe in the fall we can all go to football games again and just have a blast. Thank you for joining me tonight. Thanks to everybody here at Duck and Cover Productions. Thank you out there, especially those of you who watched my basketball games. I heard that some people actually saw them in Aruba. How's that? Thank you for joining me tonight. Good night, everybody.